Hey, today we're turning Tinkaton into a Valkyrie. Ever since I made the Viking video almost 2 years ago, I've had this idea floating around in my head, and I actually posted this sketch on Tumblr in late 2023 to anchor this thought. You can see in my scribbled design notes what I had in mind. You might be surprised how these turned out in the final design though. As you will see, this video is sort of the antithesis of the last one. These designs are more high fantasy compared to the grounded feel I was aiming for with the Machamp and Probopass redesigns. All of the elements I swore off are here. The silly Viking helmets, the dragon longship heads, the larger than life Nordic character. Enjoy!
Wow!
Alright, starting with Tinkatink, this redesign was very straightforward. I switched its color scheme to match Elekid's or Pikachu's, making it instantly recognizable as an electric type, and I made its pose much more aggressive to emulate the general punk feel of something like Toxtricity. Staying on model with baby Pokemon is actually surprisingly hard. Their proportions are very specific, and I always end up underestimating just how big their heads are. I modeled the face on its hammer after Mjolnir and changed its hairstyle to look like a mix of a music note, Pikachu tail and a greaser hairstyle. Overall, I think this turned out solid. Definitely not my most inspired work, but it gets the job done.
Tinkatink, the microphone Pokemon. Tinkatink spends every waking moment singing, but it never hits any of its notes. The shrill songs sound like grating metal, and Tinkatink colonies drive away all but the hardiest of creatures. When this Pokemon is upset, its cries become 10 times louder. It is said that even the dead fear its screams.
Tinkatuff is where the design starts to come together a little bit. The original is already very dynamic, so all I had to do was exaggerate those elements. The pose is wilder, the mouth is wide open, its eyes are closed, making it look like it's screaming its throat out. I also changed the shape of its teeth from blocky to sharp to emphasize that it's more energetic and aggressive than the original. You can see in the video that I struggled a bit with the pose, and it took a couple of tries to find a position I was satisfied with. There's a bit of an awkward tangent with the back arm, but there's not really anywhere else to put it. I added a wing ornament to the side of its head to hint at the headdress the final stage will have and where that white tuft thing is on its hips. The hammer's shape is meant to look like the ancient Norse hammer, and like the original, it retains the tiny hammerhead from the first evolution, encased by a sort of outer shell.
Tinkatuff, the Mjolnir Pokemon. Wherever it goes, Tinkatuff screams its dissonant melodies loud and proud. Neither glass nor steel can survive this cacophony, and when these Pokemon band together, entire neighborhoods are evacuated. The crackle of Tinkatuff's thundering voice reverberates powerfully through its hammerphone, and some legends claim it's amplified as many as 10,000 times over.
Tinkaton is definitely my favorite of the 3 stages, and the one I think turned out the best. That said, I was pretty frustrated with keeping track of the proportions from the last 2 stages, which is why I traced over the original design really heavily in this one to stay on model. Speaking of proportions, the hammer was again bigger than I anticipated. It was pretty tough to figure out a way to keep the full silhouette visible, make the pose dynamic, and keep the general aspect ratio of the image reasonable. You can see in the final result that Tinkaton still ended up being pretty tiny. The original has half of the hammer's haft tucked away behind it, which helps to keep the whole thing reasonably sized. I wasn't willing to give up on that dynamic look though, so I had to make some compromises. While drawing over the hammer, I noticed it really looks like a megaphone, and it oddly reminded me of something, the head of Electros from Generation 5. It kind of clicked in my head that I could mix those elements with the head of a Viking longboat, and I let the idea naturally carry my design process. Unfortunately, that meant giving up on the 4 hammer idea, which was what originally sparked this whole thing, but I think that this is a more interesting design.
Tinkaton, the Valkyrie Pokemon. This enigmatic Pokemon is said to come crashing down from the sky atop its lightning hammer, aid those it deems worthy in battle. Machamp raids are routinely stopped by Tinkaton's intervention. The hammer bears the visage of a sea monster, now long forgotten, and can be as heavy as several hundred kilograms of feathers.
To be honest, I'm glad to be rid of these. When you have an idea festering in the backlog for too long, it becomes almost a burden, something you just want to be done with. I could have kept tinkering with these designs basically forever, but there's a point when you just have to send the drawing and move on to the next one. Still, I hope you liked these. If you did, don't forget to do all the online engagement stuff. Bye bye.